It is starting. Hi all, bienvenidos a todos. I'm Adriana Cari-Jordá. I'm the communications coordinator for Low Carbon City. Let me introduce Juan Manuel España will be our moderator. He will be introducing our speakers and joining us and orienting this conversation. Low Carbon City is a global organization that aims to tackle climate change from cities, and one of our most important ways of working is guaranteeing education on interesting topics that help tackle climate change, and this is one of the spaces we do that. So we welcome you all, and I'll give now way to Juan Manuel. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed this webinar.
Okay, thanks a lot. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar, Blockchain and Climate Finance. During this webinar, 4 experts will share with us their experience and perspective on how blockchain has the ability to boost climate finance. I want to thank to the team of Low Carbon City for organizing this space. It's very important for us. Here with us today, we have Catherine Foster. Welcome, Catherine. She's Chief Strategy Officer at Blockchain Labs for Open Collaboration and co-founder of the Blockchain Climate Institute. Sven Braden, hi Sven, Program Director at the Climate Ledger Initiative and co-founder of the Good Tracking Protocol. Cecilia Repinski, hi Cecilia, Executive Director of the Stockholm Green Digital Finance. And Juan David Duran, he's Innovation Leader at XM. XM is the system operator of the Colombian power system. My name is Juan Manuel. I will be your host today. I'm a researcher at the EnergEIA University in Colombia and founder of the Transactive Energy Colombia Initiative, which is a program focused on piloting peer-to-peer energy models based on blockchain to generate technical and public policy recommendations. Once again, welcome all of you. So first, I would like to ask our experts to take a few minutes and share with us their work. What are you doing at the moment? What's the focus of the organizations that you are currently leading? Maybe Cecilia, you want to go first?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. Very interesting event. So Stockholm Green Digital Finance, we are not for profit. We were set up almost 2 years ago. And when we were set up, we were sort of alone in this space, looking specifically at fintech and sustainable finance. And I'm so excited to see that there's so many other initiatives in this space today. Our mission is to accelerate green finance and green investments through the application of fintech innovations. And we do this by collaborating with capital market actors, with financial actors, with policymakers and technology innovators, convening different perspectives to the table and creating new innovative solutions. And the reason is really that in order to successfully deliver on the Paris Agreement on climate change and the Sustainable Development Goals, we really need new creative solutions to sort of support financial actors to deliver on their full potential. So I am very excited to see that there's so many excellent initiatives in this space.
Juan David, maybe you want to go second?
Juan David, go ahead.
Yes, of course. I had a small technical issue here. But yes, here, actually, XM is a subsidiary of the ESA Group. And the ESA Group, we have introduced sustainable development as a pillar of our strategy towards 2030. And XM, we are actually the ones that operate the energy power system, and we manage the energy wholesale market. So what happened here with us is that we were researching about blockchain and the applications for blockchain in the energy sector, and what we discovered was actually an issue with the voluntary carbon market here in Colombia. And we started developing a platform where we can, it's a blockchain-based platform where you can register projects to get carbon credits. And And what we discover in our research and in the things that we have been doing is that we can boost up the MRB process, the issuance of the emission certificates, and everything what we have done until now is based on digital signatures on blockchain, and it's making the system more reliable and what I hope or what we hope it has less transactional costs than the actual system how it's working. So that's actually our project in the innovation team in XM, and yes, we hope that it will help the voluntary carbon market here in Colombia be boosted up. So
Thanks,
thank you
Juan
very
David.
much.
Thanks. Catherine? Catherine? Okay.
Yes, hi, sorry. I'm having a bit of a allergy cough, I think. Nice to meet you all and very pleased to be here. So by way of introduction, I'll just say two or three words about myself and then about the about Blockchain Climate Institute and Block and the initiatives we're working on. So I am a former Canadian diplomat on climate change, and I represented Canada to the US back in 2000 and worked on human security and sustainable development as well as international trade. I then became the business development lead for Climate Kick, which is the largest innovation initiative in Europe, with about 1,000 startups on climate impact, everything from finance to actual technological projects, as well as soft tech as well, and non-tech tech. And I then moved to Washington 2 years ago, and in that time I joined Block, Blockchain Labs for Open Collaboration, and also the Blockchain Climate Institute with the co-founder Alistair Mark. And the Blockchain Climate Institute is a not-for-profit, volunteer-led entity which functions as a think tank and a do tank, advocacy, and a chamber of commerce. And the mission of BCI is to raise awareness about international climate change policy and the potential of emerging tech to enhance climate actions. And with Block, I am the CSO, and Block is more hands-on, does demonstrator projects. We're an MIT fellow and on the UN She Innovates campaign. And the actual projects that I've been working on with Block include the marine fuel emissions. It's the first traceability pilot in the world with a sulfur cap coming on. So this has huge implications for emissions in other sectors, and that includes MRV side. We've had solar projects with 2 sandboxes, one on and off grid, even before the whole Brooklyn project came on, and now we're working on a Solarville project with IKEA. And we have a donor model for infrastructure projects. So we're also working as advisors to Ceres, to the UNDP Accelerator, and to the World Bank. Have a chapter on ethics with blockchain. I've helped build out the World Bank Carbon Markets Pilot and its framework. And we have an upcoming chapter in a Springer book on climate finance. And we actually, the Blockchain Climate Institute has a book on climate finance itself related to blockchain. So both hands-on and practical, very lean process and prototypes. Happy to.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Catherine. Sven?
Yes, I'm Sven Baden. I'm the program manager of the Climate Ledger Initiative. It's a multi-stakeholder initiative which is supported by and mandated by the governments of Switzerland and Liechtenstein. Like Catherine, I used to work for the government before, for more than 10 years for the government of Liechtenstein, and was there negotiating, besides other things, the Paris Agreement on climate change. Since 2017, I live in Lima, Peru, and I'm working more focused on blockchain and climate instruments. The CLI itself is, as I said, a multi-stakeholder initiative operated by Life Climate Foundation Liechtenstein, the company Infras, PTEC 21, and the Gold Standard Foundation. And our mission is to accelerate the Paris Agreement implementation by using digital technologies like blockchain. We do this by conducting research and promoting innovative use cases. We work with Climate Kick together in the past and hopefully in the future. And now we are about to set up a pool of use cases. We will make a call out that we want to present to our governmental contacts in the next 3 years. And this is an activity we are currently putting most of our focus on. This is my work for the Climate Ledger Initiative. And then I was asked to also give a bit of an information about the wood tracking protocol. It is a startup initiative we are conducting at this moment here in Lima, or actually in the Peruvian Amazon. I have one slide that shows that shows how it works. I'll just try to share my screen with you guys. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So in Peru, there have been some incidents or some developments that wood imports or exports, especially to the United States, were banned for the biggest companies in Peru because they were not able to prove the origin of the wood. There are just too many intermediate traders in there, and that also makes it quite or almost impossible to guarantee a sustainable forest management. So what we came up with is an application mainly operated on a smartphone, because smartphone is one of the devices that many people, even in the jungle, possess. And we managed to set up a process that mirrors the real-world activity, which is displayed here on the screen, and transfers it in the digital world. So we have the logging activity, and the logger makes a picture. GPS data will be generated, timestamped, and manual information added. The same will be repeated in the transport section. So the transportation guy makes the picture, adds information on it, and the whole thing is timestamped. The same will be repeated at the processing stage during when the wood and the timber gets to the sawmill. So by having that chain in place, we create relationships between the specific operation steps that later can be checked by a machine learning algorithm for coherence. So is it possible that that tree came to this transportation spot in this time from that GPS to that GPS? And the more data we collect, the more solid and robust the result will become. That is at least our vision. And the proof of concept was supported by the Swiss Development Cooperation Office here in Lima. And we are now trying to get the funding for the next stage, which will be a native app application development, so we can work offline and to do the first field tests with companies that have already raised interest here in Lima and in Peru. I leave it there, and we give you the power for the screen. 1 second. That's all for now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Just one note on Sven's introduction. He failed to mention that CLI actually has also been an integral part of building out the World Bank climate markets framework as well. So it's been a pleasure working with them on that.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, it's been very interesting. Thanks for sharing in such detail. I guess our viewers are happy to explore more about all the projects, and Low Carbon City will share the links to the organizations that you're representing. So let's jump into the questions, and I would like to start with Cecilia. Let's go with the basics. Why do climate finance matter for all of us? And what should be the role of the average citizen regarding climate finance?
Regarding the average citizen, I think that climate finance concerns everyone who lives on planet Earth. If we are going to successfully deliver on climate change, the financial services sector is an absolutely instrumental partner. Without private capital on board, it's not going to be possible. And of course, every citizen can influence the way their capital is being spent through this pensions account or savings account, etc. So as a citizen, what we can do is to ask questions about how the institutions managing our money is being spent. Just as general doesn't really concern technology. But I do think that digital solutions can support citizens to act upon sustainability. And I think that crowdfunding is one such really excellent example whereby citizens come in and they turn into investors. And it turns out to be a situation where it's like, please, in my backyard, this is a solution I want to see. This is the company I want to support. And if you look at many of these crowdfunding platforms, more or less a lot of these entrepreneurs, and they're actually sustainable business ideas. And through crowdfunding, they're getting the support they need in terms of seed finance to scale up and sort of pave the way for traditional actors to come on board. So one should never underestimate the power of citizen action through crowdfunding. And also we see, I mean, in terms of climate finance and bringing private capital on board, there's been a lot of discussions around blended finance ways. And we see this happening in terms of citizens coming on board as well, whereby citizens through crowdfunding platforms can actually provide the reduced risk and the extra collateral needed for other types of actors to come on board, be it angel investors or venture capitalists, or even at some point institutional investors. So we see more and more of those trends. So I would like to encourage citizens to understand that you do have the power to make a difference and to support and accelerate climate finance.
Okay, Cecilia, thanks a lot. So one of the things you're saying is that basically we need different financial mechanisms and instruments, let's say, to fight climate change. So Juan David, in this sense, I would like to ask you, how can blockchain push forward these mechanisms and innovations of climate finance? For instance, green bonds, carbon taxes, carbon markets. So how can we actually benefit from using blockchain in terms of these mechanisms?
Okay, hello. So yeah, very interesting, the question. I think Cecilia is actually the expert here on green bonds and how you can do everything from the climate finance and how every investor can see where the money is going to. That's a very interesting part of the equation. But another part of the equation is how can we liberalize and democratize carbon markets? Actually, that's our goal here in Colombia. We have played that role in the energy sector, and now we want to play that role also as well in the carbon market. And I think through blockchain technology, and not just blockchain technology, also IoT and data analytics, through these new technologies, we can low transactional costs. In this way, smaller projects will be financially viable. And actually, our hope in eco-registries is that every average citizen will be able to generate carbon credits and will be able to buy carbon credits in order to mitigate their CO2 emissions or their greenhouse emissions. That's actually our goal, and that's what we have in mind. So we started with a registry system where the MRB process is optimized and automated, and we want to go so far away, so farther that we can do certificates that are issued faster and better and are reliable. And at the end, actually, when you see the value chain, the whole value chain of the carbon market, we want to optimize it in a way that every average citizen could be a part of it. So that's actually our goal. So
thanks a lot, Juan David. So Sven, Juan David mentions a very important word, which is democratization of carbon markets. This democratization comes with transparency and reliability offered mainly by this technology, blockchain, right? So blockchain has been often called a social resource a tool that can create greater trust in society by getting people to act honestly, right, and preserve public goods, which is what we care right now for this discussion. So how can we use this social resource? How can we use blockchain to fight climate change?
That is a good point, a good question. Well, for us, or for me personally, blockchain is merely a social technology that enables or that forces its participant to play along given protocol rules. And if you design or manage to design these protocol rules in a way that it incentivizes behaviors on the ground without the need for middlemen, peer-to-peer, then it has a very strong case for scaling up climate-friendly behavior, of course, depending on the protocol. So I think the blockchain technology, or the reason why we're discussing it today and tomorrow, and then hopefully in the next decade, is because of this social component. I just wanted to comment also on the carbon market, because this is one of our major activities in the CLI, where we see the blockchain technology playing a crucial role, is also when it comes to linking domestic markets. Yeah, so we have a domestic market evolving in Mexico. We have the European Union market. We have in Canada and the US regional or subnational markets. There, the blockchain technology is really a technology that can support the linkage and thereby increase the efficiency of these markets by embedding transparent smart contracts that can be seen by all the participants, and everyone can anticipate what will happen if we link our quotas with the quotas of the other jurisdiction. And this has not been there before, that kind of transparency. That is one thing. And then, of course, under the Paris Agreement, there is the possibility that one country can invest into another country to achieve reductions, and then it claims these reductions as own reductions. And here, the blockchain technology, by establishing a universal ledger, I mean, whoever will that be, we are discussing that on an international level at the moment, by establishing a universal ledger where everyone can register its reduction, you can pretty much ensure that the double counting of such reductions is avoided. And these are major achievements. We just have to make them happen because there are some political obstacles that we have to overcome first.
Right. So, Catherine, carry on with this discussion of transparency and let's say, bringing some of the benefits that's been mentioned about blockchain. So standards, transparency, and compliance are some of the greatest challenge for climate financing, right? But at the same time, curiously, these are just a few benefits that blockchain has to offer. So, Catherine, how do entrepreneurs and innovators mobilize to match blockchain and climate finance to tackle these issues of transparency, standards, and compliance?
Well, that's a big net to cast. So I think I'll, if you don't mind, I'll pick up where Sven left off and on some of the other points first. And that is that if we're looking at where blockchain can help or help facilitate within environmental initiatives that go to this proliferation of climate markets and climate finance. So if you think about entrepreneurs working in circular economy and energy, any nonprofits working in this area, trying to harness carbon taxes or carbon credits, supply chain transparency. These are just some of the areas where we're seeing blockchain being used to help build out more decentralized, leaner models. But of course, they're happening in silos, right? And in different platforms and within different regulatory bases and in different legacy systems. So at the same time that blockchain is purported to help, it is a very complex, much more heterogeneous landscape that we're dealing with. And with the 2020 climate markets coming up and this proliferation of decentralized, bottom-up carbon initiatives, carbon pricing initiatives, climate finance initiatives, including all these voluntary initiatives where entrepreneurs are able to step in, we have a huge increase in the size and scope of coverage, but this massive heterogeneity. diversity and even fragmentation. So we're sort of blurring the boundaries between the various schemes. And so it's very complex and very, the big issue is interoperability of those initiatives, right? And so as Sven said, you know, the risk of fraud, the risk of errors, double counting, issues of quality of units traded. How do you trade a unit from here in that market there and make sure that that unit's not traded? So that's where blockchain is able to step in, but only if we actually start linking up the blockchain initiatives itself. So, you know, in order to have entrepreneurs working in this area, we need to understand that the initiatives can't be built in silos, that the data inputs still have to be verified. So whatever you're building in the landscape, ensure that the data is actually concrete and solid going in. Otherwise, DLT will just entrench those errors or that fallibility. And we have to look at combining with other technologies, and that's another wonderful opportunity for entrepreneurs. So by building in sensors, by building in drones, by building in all sorts of emerging tech, we're able to address some of this interoperability issues across these fragmented landscape. And so, and then we just have the final point about, you know, the governance systems that we have to put across and linking up these different markets and these different initiatives by entrepreneurs and innovators, that we ensure that data inputs are verified and that we can convert them to mitigation outcomes and carbon assets. That's a basic fundamental step that we often assume is going to be easy, but that's where hard work has to happen.
Okay, thanks a lot, Catherine. And you actually mentioned or answer one of the questions we had, which was how these, you know, how blockchain can or how these emerging technologies complement each other to favor climate finance, right? So artificial intelligence and IoT, just to name a few. So thanks for sharing your perspective on this. I wanna take a look at one of the challenges that arises from blockchain. I'm pretty sure that most of the viewers right now have heard this problem from blockchain, and this is an open question for all of you. Some blockchain detractors argue that if talking about sustainability, energy required to power blockchains is vast and increases exponentially over time, right? Making the technology unsustainable and misaligned with climate finance. But on the other hand, supporters argue that energy consumption should be evaluated in terms of the value that decentralization offers to society. And it could actually leverage renewable energy. Yeah. What is your stand on this? I mean, what would be your approach to this discussion, right? We have energy consumption what's on one side, but we have value generation on the other.
Well, if I might jump in first, I get asked this question a lot, and I'm sure the others as well. And I think first we just say we're not presenting it as an either or black and white. We're talking about a spectrum in terms of blockchain technology, and that's associated with the proof that is available. So most of us and entrepreneurs are not building on the larger platforms like Bitcoin and others that are taking up that energy consumption. So it's the mining as a proof is the one that is largely under fire for the energy consumption. There are other proofs available that are much leaner, and that's one element. So it's a spectrum we have to consider in terms of the needs for the actual build. The second is, so it's like saying, let's choose the right architecture for what we're doing. We're not going to build a parking lot on a freeway, so let's make sure we build in the right way. Second is that we can build in renewable energy into the systems, and we're not starting from a great place anyway. The entire, our entire intranet and technology worldwide is as high in emissions as the airline industry as it stands. So we're not starting from a great base point. So if we can harness renewable energies to fuel some of these platforms to fuel some of the builds, then that's a big part of it. And building in renewable energy certificates, etc., could be a definite part of that. So I would say, yeah, let's choose your platform, build in renewables and other capacities, and be lean, basically. I'm sure others have other inputs there.
Yes, I would like to add, I think, I agree with what you said, of course, Catherine, and I think it's very early days in terms of blockchain technology, and it becomes more and more efficient. That said, not, like Catherine said, not all applications have to be built on the Bitcoin, and what we are doing with the Green Assets Wallet, for example, which is a blockchain-based technology for scaling the green debt market with a focus on green bonds. Required is the same amount.
Cecilia, I think we're having problems with the connection. Cecilia. Cecilia, yeah.
Oh, poor, that's too bad.
Yeah. Cecilia.
It's breaking up.
Yeah, I think it's breaking.
I think to pick up on her point, she was saying, you know, it's early days still, and the technology and current solutions are still limited in scalability, and we can build into it.
So maybe Juan or Sven want to say something?
I think we'll have to. Sorry, Cecilia.
Cecilia? Okay. Let me just quickly text her. Maybe Sven or Juan wanna share your perspective on this?
Just a quick input from my side, because this is one of the most pressing questions we are confronted from governments. Of course, the electricity consumption is is an issue of as we heard, of some blockchains, but we see that this is a thing that can be technically overcome with the time. We already see alternative in how to achieve consensus. You don't have to achieve consensus via the whole network of computer nodes. You can also make local consensus. You can jump from a proof of work to a proof of stake to proof of delegated stake. So just to close here, this is I think this is something of the early days, a sickness of the early days that we come along with, and that we will overcome as in the development of the adoption of the technology. And that's why we really need a broad research and cooperation, as Captain has envisaged.
Okay, so yes. So to wrap up, the idea is for everyone who's interested and who has this, let's say, idea in mind, is to go beyond and explore more technology developments that tackle this issue and explore opportunities to boost renewable energy, right? And it's very important to clarify this, because sometimes, many times, this emerges as an obstacle for blockchain, and it's kind of a superficial to think that to this point that would be the main barrier.
Actually, I wanted to add something to that, what the other panelists already said. Yes, one thing is the technology is evolving, and you can jump from proof of work to different kind of consensus algorithm. That's one thing. The other thing is also there are other DLT developments that are very interesting, like DAG, the direct acyclic graphs. That's very interesting because it works very fine with IoT. So actually, if you are looking to work with some IoT implementations, actually DAG is the answer for your praise. So it's actually so lean that it works in small appliances, in small microcontrollers. So it's very interesting to look up to that. And also, actually, what I compare sometimes when somebody asks me this question is, okay, if you want to compare the energy consumption of blockchain, you don't have to compare it with the traditional information systems. You have to compare it with a group of people trying.
Oh no, we're dropping off.
Juan?
Oh, it's too bad. I agree. We've actually used a number of different protocols. We're tech agnostic in one of the organizations I'm working for, Block, and that is where we test according to a matrix of standards and criteria according to what type of build we want to do. And this is a really good starting point and good advice for anyone working in that field is just, be sure you know the landscape before you dive in, because things are evolving.
Right. Sven, where do you see the blockchain technology in 10 years regarding climate finance? Do you see it as a disruption, one of many that we need to really scaling up climate finance?
I think blockchain will become some sort of a standard of international cooperation in general, and specifically for climate change or climate finance. We already see some use cases. There is one from the BNDES, Brazilian Development Bank, together with KfW. They use a token system to track their financial contribution towards joint implemented projects, so they can observe in a live situation where part of the funds go. That is a tremendous advantage if you compare it with a traditional and conventional situation where everyone has its own ledger and everyone has to ensure that its own ledger is somehow coherent with the one of its business partners. But if you can operate on one ledger where you add the information along predefined protocol rules, that can achieve a lot of efficiency gains. And I think it is we will have that probably integrated in some cooperative technology platform in 10 years, and no one will ask if it's blockchain or not. It might be a DAG system, it might be a blockchain system, but we will have this trusted technology. It's evolving and probably very rapidly in the next 4 or 5 years.
Okay, so basically one of the things you're saying right now is that blockchain is going to be business as usual in a few years regarding carbon markets and climate finance?
No, that's well, that would be a wish, business as usual. But I think that the big players, they cannot afford to ignore that technology because it is just on the hand the advantages it can offer. It has its limitations, but the potential it offers can only be unleashed if you really do research and you do cooperation in the field. And that is what we will see, and we will probably see also some projects failing. But in terms of climate finance, that is to say the delivery of financial resources from A to B. I think we see a strong case for blockchain, as we see it already in the financial sector in general. In terms of carbon markets, the whole thing is a bit more politically, and we have the voluntary market and the mandatory market. We have the regional markets. We have the Paris Agreement. I think it might take a little bit longer, but also there I see a strong case for the blockchain technology.
Good.
If it will be business as usual, I'm not sure. No, probably
okay. Not. Cecilia, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
So I want to ask you something, and it's regarding climate financing at the local level. This is a complex problem, but it's crucial for making a difference. There are some reports from the EIIED that says that 10% of climate finance reaches community. How and to which extent do you think blockchain technologies and other fintech technologies help to support local communities and small-scale projects?
Well, that's really what we try to do with the Green Assets Wallet. It's a blockchain-based technology that aims at scaling and supporting the green debt market. And initially, we have built this for green bonds, but we're moving into green loans, etc. And the idea is really to enable investors to make greater impact in their investments. So we have a situation where a lot of financial institutions and investors, they claim that there's a lack of credible investment opportunities to act upon. And at the same time, we have lots of investment needs. So it's like we have all of these investors searching for investment opportunities, and we have all of these investment needs, and there's a gap in between. It's like a bottleneck. So there are many things that can be done to support and sort of drag out this bottleneck. And we use technology to support this and to help, inject efficiency so we can scale the supply of green debt opportunities, but also inject trust so that we can make a wider range of investment opportunities accessible to the mainstream investor. So to give you an example, in the green bond market, investors very much invest in the known issuer. So if you know the company issuing a green bond, you invest in it because you can trust it, the actor. So if we want to move investors towards investing in high impact projects issued by issuers that are less well known to them, how can we inject that level of trust for those high impact projects to actually help investors, make that connection? So that's what we're doing with the Green Assets Wallet. And I think that what you're talking about, helping to make projects bankable in emerging and developing markets, that's really what it's all about. Because it's one climate system, and if we want to deliver on climate change, the money needs to go where the additionality and the impact is the greatest. So to give you an example, one of the pilot companies we're working with in the Green Assets Wallet, it's a Malaysian issuer, and they do renewable energy with their green bond proceeds. And if you would invest in, I think that every sustainable investment is a welcome investment, so don't get me wrong. But if you invest in, if you would, forced to make a choice between, a wind power investment in Sweden or one in Malaysia, if you look at Malaysia, it's dependent on mainly coal and gas. So if you would support the production and growth of renewable energy, the benefit on the overall climate system would, of course, be greater. So that's really what we try to do. We try to bridge these things and make these projects more accessible.
Okay, Cecilia, thanks. Technology, blockchain technology is very innovative, is very new, has an accelerated nature. And then we have the volatility of crypto markets. So these make people nervous, right? So some investors, some governments. So blockchain may be regarded as risky and too young to be taken seriously. That's what we thought some organizations thought a few years ago. But from your projects and your activities, you are showing that there are important players and governments taking this seriously. So what does it take to gain this institutional trust in blockchain? What does it take to gain citizens' trust in blockchain as well? Especially for emerging economies that are rather new to these technology disruptions. Whoever wants to answer, I see you, Catherine.
Is that an open question? Yeah. Yeah, I think you made a really good point there, that there has been this, the rise of the crypto economies and initial coin offerings, and especially in the social impact space as SDG project crowdfunding, combined with that high failure rate of ICOs that we saw last year, as well as I think there's been a mismatched culture of incentives. and a fundamental gap between investment requirements and collaborations and integrated models. And so I think there's been this confounding of the ICO, the cryptocurrency, and actual blockchain build. And I think we need to do a better job at communicating the differences between those, because I think everyone here has been working on very successful models that have harnessed blockchain itself, and not we haven't done ICOs. And I think it's a really important distinction to make there. And the trust, I think what we're finding is actually by using and harnessing the technology. So, for example, in the fuel transparency case, the maritime industry is one of the most traditional conservative industries in the world. But by using our pilot demonstrator build, a very lean approach, it brought key stakeholders together and sometimes competitors to actually work together. And that helped, educate about the emerging technology to build the trust of what is the difference between transparency and visibility of data, and then to trust in and to push forward also more integrity around the data. In the maritime industry, for example, most of the data is handwritten and uploaded handwritten. So we also have to be careful about the assumptions we make about the automation that's in place here. And that's an actual advantage of blockchain and this emerging technology, is that we're pushing better compliance, better standards for data capture and sharing. And then I think I think that's basically a big element of what we're trying to do. So the trust is built in by actually doing it with the stakeholder, and a consortia approach is really very beneficial in this area.
So actually, if I may answer also that question, our approach here in our country is different. Actually, when I come to a policymaker and some stakeholders, I don't go and say, okay, here's my blockchain project. No, actually, what I do is I explain to them, okay, would you imagine if you had a database where you can lower transaction costs, a database where you can see everything is traceable, that the reliability is given by the database? Would you imagine a database that is like that? And then you can see and you can explain to them how, for example, a year before, a lot of small hydropower plants that we interviewed told us, okay, I would like to generate some carbon credits for the voluntary market here in Colombia, but it's too expensive for me. So I told them, okay, here, this is the platform, use it. You can lower transactional costs in a way that it will be more financial viable for you. So in order, when you see the application is working, when you see the functionality of the solution, then actually you don't care if it's blockchain based or if it is a traditional database. Actually, what you see at the end, when you show the implementation, you tell them, okay, now you saw the implementation here. This is a blockchain-based application. So our solution is based on blockchain, and we separate everything that has to do with cryptocurrencies with the application that we want to solve. That's one approach we do a lot. And actually, what we always say here in our project is, let's say, okay, there is another subsidiary that has developed an application that's called AppEmotion, where you can track the CO2 emissions for every citizen. So if he walks, if he takes the bus, if he takes the car to work and everything. And what we say is, could you imagine in the future that you could also put all these CO2 emissions in this registry system, and the people who walk would then would be able to generate carbon credits, and they would have an incentive to walk more and to use other kind of transportation systems. That's actually what we intend. And when you see the final solution, you don't care actually if it's blockchain or not. Yeah. So actually,
I agree with that. And I think what you're saying is the same thing. You start with the value proposition first. You start with the challenge base. What is the problem you're trying to solve? What is the solution? And I think that's where, the tech agnostic approach has to come in, and that's what we do as well. And so rather than trying to sell a top-down solution, which I don't see actually working too often in this space, the one I cited was actually building with consortia. We identified the problem with the consortia and with the industry through a grant. And by saying, okay, actually, you don't need blockchain here. This legacy will work just as well. But in this case, there is no solution, so we can actually build with you. So there's a difference between a top-down solution that's ready to go and scale up, and actually trying to solve for a specific problem where a solution doesn't exist or where it's really inefficient. So I think it's absolutely right. You start with the challenge base. And I would also just add here that the ethics framework that we worked on, I think, is really important here too, because it also adds that question of, are you just trying to sell technology for technology's sake? And what assumptions you're making in that. So I absolutely agree with this approach.
I absolutely agree with Juan and Catherine on that. Very important to start with, what is the problem, and does the solution involve technology? In that case, yes, let's explore. But it's really important point.
Okay. So to wrap up, maybe what you are all proposing is that we need to create real solutions to tackle real problems, hopefully with a purpose, such as climate change. We need to communicate, and very important, we need to collaborate. It's a matter of doing this with a lot of stakeholders, not by ourselves. So I think this is a wonderful conclusion for this webinar. We have a few questions maybe from the public, from our followers. So this is for Juan. How do you guys see in Colombia the regulatory barriers that might delay blockchain development in the energy market? Why it would be needed? This is probably not only for Colombia. I think this is worldwide, but maybe the Colombian perspective from Juan is very interesting for all of you. So Juan, maybe you can share some insights on the regulatory landscape. Juan. I think we lost Juan. That's right. Yeah. I think we lost Juan.
Maybe I can jump in terms of the barriers that might exist in economies. That there is a mindset that is responsible for delaying development of technologies like the blockchain technologies. For example, if you have a space, let's say the MRV space, in when countries produce their greenhouse gas inventories, and in many countries, let's say in Europe or in Canada, the system works. They have the system in place, and if something is working, then there is no need to really improve it. Even though we have a new technology that makes it faster and more transparent and more secure. And there you have the problem that people, of course, it's an economic problem. When you say we don't need the middleman anymore, because we have the technology now. This is a process. You cannot do this from today to tomorrow. And then this can also create a barrier in the first place. So you have to address that with some cautious when it comes to transformational changes on such a large scale as is promised or announced by the blockchain technology. And then, of course, the existing infrastructures. Not everyone is happy with the involvement. And as I said, it might cost jobs. It might transform things. And now I see that Juan is back, and I want to give him the Colombia.
Okay. So Juan, we were talking about the barriers for blockchain development, and so one person asked specifically for the energy market, since you are currently working with the electric sector in Colombia. Maybe you can share with us your perspective on how energy markets are kind of face this regulation barrier regarding blockchain? Juan? I think we lost Juan. Okay.
Actually, so actually, the energy market here in Colombia right now, like, okay, it's what is going on is
yeah, we lost Juan again. Okay, so we have another question, and it's how blockchain could bring a better opportunity for smaller players. I think this is a very, very interesting one. Let's try to see. Okay, Sven, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, what I can, well, maybe I can start bringing it from the big picture to the small picture. If we see the development of data generation today, with all these millions and billions devices to be connected with each other, and then at the moment we have these 4, 5, 6 big worldwide data corporations that grasp all that data, then I'm pretty happy that we have something like the blockchain technology evolving, because that gives the people that generate these data the opportunity back to share their data while retaining control, and thereby also monetizing the data. So the blockchain technology itself can re-democratize the way we deal with data today, and that is something that is probably very important when we talk about what is the benefit for the small communities, for the people on the ground. Here we see potentials for new business models, peer-to-peer, that haven't been able before.
Mm-hmm. I would add to that, Sven, great introduction to it, because I think, with all the various initiatives and small initiatives going up, a big problem is that getting a standardized process for linking and establishing initiatives and, for example, assets for the climate markets is just not going to be feasible, because it's so heterogeneous and so small. It's not seen as a big issue. So the idea that we can actually create composable digital assets, if we can link the individual actions into this composable digital asset that can be assembled in different combinations to satisfy these larger requirements of initiatives, and then allow that facilitation and that cross exchange, that's where real capacity does occur.
All right, thanks, Catherine. So let's give Juan another shot.
Okay,
Juan.
thank you very much. So I will try to answer the question. So actually, what we have right now in the wholesale energy market is a very stable system. So to change this stable working system into a new system, it takes time, and that's what we are doing. So we are actually going into our company and every single step by step trying to change some systems and like migrate them to another new kind of system. So that's for the wholesale market. And for the wholesale energy market, it will be able, because I can imagine, for example, we have also a registration system where we are working together with some agents in the energy sector to be able to have like a energy blockchain, like an energy sector blockchain, that where everybody can exchange the information. That's one thing. And what we are also seeing in the future will be the possible way of doing smart contracts, because what we see in the wholesale energy market are bilateral contracts. So actually we have big contracts between generators and consumers. So those could migrate to smart contracts, but it's not a thing that we do in 1 month or 2 months. It's actually a project that we are developing and trying to understand how to do that kind of solution, and how to provide let's say, a better solution with lower transactional costs, and that we can solve the same thing that we are doing right now. That's for the wholesale energy market. And for the peer-to-peer market, it's actually a different story, because the barriers there are not actually the technology. The technology is there, and the technology is there to be used, but the barriers there are more regulations. So actually, what we have done in that matter is to be in touch with the policymakers and try to explain to them, and that everyone understands what are the possibilities, what are the new business models that could be created. And for that, we also have a new like a research project where we imagine how it's going to be the energy sectors in 2030. And we are working with some universities. Actually, the EIA is working with us in this project. What we see is, we imagine how the future is going to be, and we have a simulation model where every actor can play a role in the simulation model. And on top of that, we put some, let's say, different kind of solutions. They are not all based on blockchain, so different kind of solutions, and see how the people will interact with them. So that's actually what we're doing in our company, researching a lot, seeing how it fits and how we can move forward. It doesn't have to be blockchain per se. It's just we are researching which is the best technology that would be suitable for us. It's not like to say something that Catherine said. You don't go and say here is blockchain because it's blockchain. No, you have to find if the technology is the right fit for your problem or for your solution. So that's actually what we're investigating in our company, together with universities and other research centers in Colombia and also in Europe and in the USA. So actually, that's a very big research project that we're doing, and I think we are going to do it step by step, not like we change everything at one time. We're going to do it step by step.
So I want to mention something about what you just said, Juan, and it's very important that for the wholesale market, electricity market, we are not really talking about new markets or disruption. And it's not that regulation is actually a barrier, right? So we have clear problems. We don't need just to fit in blockchain just because it's blockchain, but we can actually, you guys are actually working on solutions to improve the efficiency of the market. This works also for the financial market, for climate finance in general. It's logistics. I mean, there are many industries in which it's not about blockchain. It's about just using the technology to solve a problem that we have there. And it's not that we have barriers at the moment. It's that we need to work harder to create solutions. But you also say, in terms of peer-to-peer energy, that's when we actually face regulation barriers, right? And that's when we have to be a little bit more creative, but we also have to collaborate with the stakeholders and authorities, right? So, guys, we are close to finishing the webinar. We have passed the time a little bit, but if any of you want to share final thoughts on maybe wrap up what we have been discussing here. No?
Sure. I'm happy to say, I think, wrapping up on what you've just said, both of you, it's actually very essential that we also speak across regions and across sectors about these lessons learned and the approach that we're taking. You know, we've done peer-to-peer on and off grid, and I think it would be really great to compare efforts, and I think across sectors as well. And to me, we touched on some really important parts here, and there was a really good discussion that, you know, we start with problem identification and ensure that stakeholders are involved, and that includes the regulatory space as well as ground up. So in order to have integrated solutions, whether they're with technology or not, or with blockchain or not, that is an essential starting point, and linking those together and sharing the lessons learned is really essential.
Great, thanks a lot, Catherine.
I also want just to say a quick thank you also on behalf of the CLI to have us here. Just wanted to make the call that we are planning a call for proposals for blockchain use cases in the climate space that will be in the second half of this year. And as far as I know, I've now learned about the green wallets and the initiative for the activities in Colombia's energy sector. So we'd be happy to get in contact, to reach out, and to pursue collaboration also with existing as with Catherine before. And thanks for the invite from Manuel.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone as well. Really interesting to listen to your great work in this space. And I think what's interesting is that on the one hand, we have communities being able to deliver solutions regardless. Because, you know, if you look at energy trading systems, etc., the possibilities are really endless. At the same time, we also see that policymakers are increasingly waking up to the potentials of blockchain and fintech. And I was just in Brussels last week as the EU had a high-level conference on sustainable finance. And there was lots of discussions around fintech as a lever and as an enabler. So I think that policymaking is really picking this up as well, trying to see what they can do in terms of policymaking and regulatory space to make it easier for those initiatives that help deliver climate finance to flourish even better.
Okay, thanks a lot, Cecilia.
Actually, I wanted to comment also. What I can see here is, for example, the policymakers here in Colombia had already made a statement because they put explicitly in the National Development Plan that blockchain could be like a backbone technology for the development of our country. So to integrate blockchain is actually very important for our government. And I think that's a very big step for us. And what I see in the let's say in the blockchain community is that there are a lot of initiatives, all of them very interesting ones, and in the future these spaces are very good because you get to exchange with some people that are working in the same topic you are, and in the future we would have to actually unite everyone and say, okay, this has to be standardized in some way, or some things have to be this way. Actually, we have to come to an agreement at the end. And actually, I will be in touch with all of you, especially also the invitation for the Climate for Action is very interesting. And you will have our project there in the CLI. Of course, we will present them to you. And also with Catherine and Cecilia, it was very interesting talking to you. And thanks to Low Carbon City to invite us.
Thanks for your thoughts, Juan, and I agree with you. This is great. We often claim that blockchain is collaboration, equals collaboration, and it's great to see that this space results in new connections and future projects. I invite all the viewers as well to connect with the speakers, with our experts, and I'm sure you are all happy to answer questions and take this forward and explore more solutions. Thanks, Low Carbon, again for this invitation, for this space. And yes,
on behalf of Low Carbon City, we want to thank everyone that got online, that saw this webinar, that will continue sharing it. We want to thank our wonderful speakers, our wonderful moderator, and we wish you all a very good day. And we invite you all to tackle climate change as individuals, as organizations, and Low Carbon City is there to spread the knowledge and support these sort of initiatives. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.